Awaken your spirit chosen ones. Pay attention, because when the people who doubted you start whispering your name with respect, the story has already flipped, and they're the last ones to realize it. There's a strange moment in life that almost nobody talks about. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. There's no victory music playing in the background. It's quiet. So quiet that if you blink, you'll miss it. It's the moment when the same mouths that questioned you start quoting you. When the same people who rolled their eyes start repeating your words like advice. When the same trusted sources they used against you suddenly say, yeah, that person. They're actually exceptional. And now everybody's standing there pretending they believed in you the whole time. Funny how that works. Here's a fact most people don't realize. Human beings trust authority more than their own judgment. Psychologists call it social proof. If a credible source approves something, people follow without thinking twice. That's why reviews matter. That's why titles matter. That's why one expert opinion can flip a whole crowd. So imagine this. They didn't trust you, but they trusted their experts, their mentors, their so-called insiders, their reliable voices. And those very voices turned around and stamped you with one word: legendary. Now what are they supposed to do? Argue with the people they worship? Suddenly their whole argument collapses like cheap plastic chairs at a family party. Now they look silly, because every source they leaned on to doubt you just accidentally confirmed you. That's not just validation, that's humiliation with witnesses. And here's the part that makes it almost comedic. You didn't even try to prove anything. You weren't giving speeches or chasing approval. You were just living, building, improving, minding your business, while they were hosting entire committee meetings about your life, like it was a national crisis. Imagine putting that much energy into someone who isn't even thinking about you. Embarrassing. This isn't a story about revenge or bragging rights. It's about something deeper. It's about what happens when truth keeps showing up so consistently that denial starts looking childish. It's about what happens when people realize the person they underestimated was quietly outgrowing every label they put on them. It's about the uncomfortable day when their trusted sources start laughing, not at you, but at them for misjudging you so badly. And that's where everything shifts, because once credibility backs you, the debate is over. All that's left is their awkward silence, and you walking forward like you always have. Number one, their experts certified you before they were emotionally ready to accept you. What makes this situation almost ironic is that the people who doubted you didn't actually change their minds because of some grand speech you gave or some flashy achievement you posted online. No. Their own trusted authorities did it for you. The teachers they respected, the mentors they quoted, the professionals they swore by, the people they called smart and credible. Those were the same ones who quietly looked at you and said, "This person is different." And that's where everything broke for them. Because it's easy to dismiss someone when it's just your personal opinion. It's easy to say they're overrated or they're not that special when it costs nothing to talk. But once a respected voice stamps you with approval, their disbelief starts to look childish. Now it's not just taste or preference anymore. Now it's evidence. That's what they weren't ready for. They thought you were just another person they could casually underestimate. Someone they could box up with labels like average, lucky, or replaceable. But then the very systems they trusted to judge talent, evaluations, results, recognition, performance, consistency, kept pointing back to you like a spotlight that wouldn't turn off. Every time they tried to discredit you, someone credible validated you instead. It felt unfair to them, not because you cheated, not because you manipulated anything, but because you didn't fit the story they told themselves about you. And when experts validate someone you secretly dislike, It creates a strange kind of embarrassment. Now, they have to either admit they were wrong or pretend the experts don't matter anymore. Suddenly, the same people they used to quote like scripture become biased or overhyped. The mental gymnastics are exhausting to watch. The truth is simple, though. You didn't force anyone to defend you. Your work did that. Your consistency did that. Your presence did that. You were certified without campaigning. While they were still debating whether you were worth anything, the verdict had already been signed. And nothing stings the ego more than realizing the decision was made without their permission. Number 2. Every attempt to fact-check you accidentally became evidence for you. Some people didn't watch you because they admired you. They watched you because they were waiting for you to slip. There's a big difference. Supporters look for reasons to clap. Doubters look for reasons to say, "I knew it." And you had a whole audience of quiet investigators studying your every move like they were building a case. They checked your background. They questioned your process. They dissected your wins. They replayed your mistakes in slow motion, not because they cared, but because they wanted to catch something, anything, a lie, an exaggeration, a shortcut, some hidden flaw they could expose and finally say, "See, they're not that special." But here's where it backfired. The deeper they looked, the cleaner everything was. Your story lined up. Your work ethic made sense. Your results weren't random. Your growth wasn't luck. There was no secret trick, no stolen credit, no fake persona. Just effort stacked on effort, day after day. And that's what frustrated them, because it's easier to dismiss someone when you believe they cheated. It's comforting to think success is rigged or fake. That way, you don't have to confront your own lack of discipline. But when someone digs into your life expecting dirt and keeps finding proof of integrity instead, it creates a problem they can't explain away. Now their investigation starts looking like an endorsement. Every time they tried to expose you, they ended up confirming you. Yeah, they really did that. Yeah, they actually put in the work. Yeah, they've been consistent for years. At some point, it stops being suspicion and starts becoming reluctant respect. The funniest part is they became your unpaid researchers. They gathered receipts, timelines, and facts thinking it would destroy your credibility, but all it did was strengthen it. They built the file themselves. You didn't defend yourself. You didn't argue. You didn't chase their approval. You just kept doing what you do. And the truth handled the rest. Nothing is more uncomfortable for a critic than realizing their investigation didn't expose you. It proved you. Number 3, their gossip turned into free marketing. The irony is almost delicious. The very people who thought they were tearing you down ended up building you up. Every whisper, every rumor, every story they spread to make you look smaller became a billboard advertising your presence. They didn't realize that people are drawn to intrigue, to the unknown, to the forbidden knowledge they hear in hushed tones. By talking about you, by exaggerating or twisting facts, they made you more interesting than you ever had to try to be. They thought ridicule would work. They thought mocking you in private or in small circles would keep your name buried. But instead, it made people curious. Every joke at your expense, every sideways comment, every subtle warning sounded like a teaser. Suddenly, everyone wanted to see for themselves if the whispers were true. Their attempts to discredit you became the exact opposite of what they intended. They turned their energy into your promotion. The funniest part is they never realized they were doing it. They imagined control. They imagined influence. They thought they were shaping the narrative, the reality. They were only giving your story wings. People tend to trust what others are talking about. Conversation alone becomes validation, and their conversations were everywhere. Even their laughter and scoffing played a role. People are naturally drawn to controversy, so when they tried to make you look small, They made you unforgettable. And the more dramatic their gossip, the bigger the impression they left. Every distorted version of you became a puzzle people wanted to solve, a character they couldn't ignore. By the end, the same people who wanted to keep your name out of their circles became unwitting agents of your reputation. Every rumor they spread, every smirk they gave, every quiet complaint they shared amplified your presence far beyond what you could have managed alone. They gave your story life. They gave your success a stage. They made you legendary without ever realizing it. In trying to harm you, they created the very platform that allowed you to rise, and now their laughter echoes as the soundtrack of your growth. Number 4. Their trusted allies quietly switched sides. The shift often goes unnoticed at first because it doesn't happen with fanfare. The people who used to cheer the loudest for the doubters, the ones they leaned on for validation, suddenly go quiet. You don't see them announcing their support, but the change is there in small ways. The comments stop. The private messages stop. The subtle digs stop. And somewhere in the background, they start observing you differently. That silence is heavy, and it carries more weight than any argument ever could. These are the people who once reinforced the narrative against you. They were the witnesses your critics cited, the friends whose opinions counted, the voices that made their doubts feel legitimate. But when you consistently outperform expectations, when you quietly keep building your life while staying consistent and grounded, even these allies have to adjust. They can no longer blindly back the skeptics. They see the truth and have to acknowledge it, even if it's only in private. And that's where it becomes fascinating. The loud critics stay loud, clinging to pride and denial. But the smart, observant and strategic ones, the ones who matter, start acting differently. They start listening. They start respecting. They start realigning themselves in ways that are almost invisible. Their shift isn't for show, it's survival. They recognize who holds real credibility, and they move silently to stay on the right side of reality. This quiet switch exposes a hidden hierarchy of influence. You don't notice it immediately, but it changes the social dynamics around you. Suddenly, the critics are standing alone with outdated arguments. Their trusted network has slowly unraveled without them even realizing it. They're left repeating old narratives that nobody supports anymore, while you move forward unaffected. The most powerful part is you didn't force the change. You didn't campaign for allies or manipulate relationships. You simply lived and demonstrated what could not be denied. And in doing so, the people they trusted most ended up becoming witnesses to your credibility, leaving your critics exposed, isolated, and increasingly irrelevant. Quietly, without anyone noticing, the tide shifted, and it shifted entirely in your favor. Number 5. Their consistency embarrassed their excuses. There's a brutal kind of power in showing up every single day, doing the work, and refusing to falter for anyone's approval or recognition. You weren't flashy. You didn't make grand announcements or desperate posts. You just kept moving, steady and relentless, and that's what broke them. Because while they were busy justifying their own inaction, you were quietly stacking wins, building skills, and proving that effort isn't temporary, it's a lifestyle. Consistency exposes weakness like nothing else. People love excuses. They cling to them. I didn't have time. It's not the right moment. I'll start tomorrow. Every excuse feels valid until someone shows up day after day without needing to explain themselves. Suddenly, their reasons for staying behind look absurd. Your routine didn't just get results, it shamed their logic. Every milestone you hit highlighted the gap between what they said they wanted and what they actually did. They watched and couldn't reconcile it. Their attempts to rationalize your progress fell flat. They must have help. They're lucky. It's not fair. But you weren't relying on luck or handouts. You were consistent, methodical, and deliberate, and they knew it. Every missed opportunity on their part, every day they wasted doubting or criticizing, became proof of their own shortcomings. What makes this even more powerful is that consistency doesn't scream. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't require validation. You were building a track record, a silent evidence trail, one action at a time. By the time anyone noticed, the results spoke louder than their complaints could. Their excuses looked hollow, childish, and embarrassing because they were built on nothing more than projection and fear, while you were quietly building reality. Consistency humbles people, not because it's flashy, but because it's undeniable. When someone lives in alignment with their purpose every day, it exposes everyone else's illusions. Your steady effort, repeated over time, became a mirror reflecting what they avoided facing. They weren't just behind you, they were standing still. And the truth stings more when it doesn't come with fanfare. Number 6. You passed tests you didn't even know you were taking. Life has a way of putting people through challenges without giving them a manual. Most of the time, the people watching you assume you're failing because they only see the surface. They think success comes from carefully planned moves, flashy moments, or deliberate strategies. What they don't realize is that some of the most important tests happen quietly, without anyone announcing them. And you passed them all, often without even realizing it. Pressure, doubt, scrutiny, and unexpected obstacles came your way. People were observing, analyzing, hoping to see cracks. They expected moments of panic, mistakes, or poor judgment. They wanted to catch you slipping so they could confirm their skepticism. But your reactions weren't performative. They were instinctive, calm, and controlled. You handled situations with integrity and composure, not for recognition, but because that's who you were. Every challenge they thought would expose you instead highlighted your strength. Even when circumstances were unfair or stacked against you, you adapted. You didn't bend to their expectations. You didn't try to prove them wrong. You simply made decisions that aligned with your path and values. That quiet mastery of life's unpredictable tests made you untouchable in ways no one could anticipate. And that's the part that unsettles people the most. They believed they could predict your limits, measure your reactions, and find weaknesses. Instead, you consistently exceeded their expectations without ever playing the game they thought they controlled. Every test they assumed would show your flaws ended up confirming your competence, your resilience, and your authenticity. By passing tests you didn't even know you were taking, you created proof that success isn't always about effort that's seen or validated. It's about showing up, navigating challenges with clarity, and remaining unshaken when others are counting on you to fail. The more they watched, the more they realized that you weren't just surviving. You were quietly proving a truth they refused to acknowledge. Some people are built to rise no matter the trials placed before them. Number 7. They realized you weren't competing with them at all. One of the most disarming truths is that you never treated them as your rivals. While they were busy sizing you up, comparing every move, calculating every advantage, and strategizing ways to outshine or undermine you, you were operating on a completely different plane. You weren't chasing status, approval, or validation from anyone. You were focused on building your life, your skills, your vision, and your values. And that's what made it almost impossible for them to fight you. They assumed the race was theirs to dictate. They assumed every step you took was meant to challenge them directly. That illusion fueled their criticism and gossip. They wanted drama, conflict, and competition because it was comfortable to see you as an opponent. But while they were tangled in their own games, you were moving forward in a way they couldn't measure. Their energy was reactive, yours was proactive. Their attention was fixed on you, yours was fixed on growth. The realization that you weren't even competing with them destabilized their ego. They wanted to beat someone who was in the same game. They wanted to dominate a field they could measure. But when it became clear you were playing by your own rules, with your own standards, and on your own timeline, their strategies fell apart. Every insult, every critique, every attempt to manipulate or control you suddenly looked petty and desperate. The brilliance of this is that it wasn't obvious at first. They could only slowly see it in the results you were producing, the calm with which you navigated challenges, and the way people naturally gravitated toward your presence without you chasing them. They realized too late that they were competing with shadows, while you were shaping reality. By refusing to treat them as opponents, by focusing entirely on your own path, you gained a level of freedom and power they could neither anticipate nor disrupt. The most frustrating part for them is that it wasn't even intentional. It was a byproduct of living on a higher frequency, where competition isn't about others, it's about becoming the best version of yourself. Number 8. Their inside information about you kept being wrong. They thought they knew you. They believed they had the facts, the history, the patterns, the weaknesses. They leaned on what they heard, what they assumed, and what they were told by people who were just as biased as they were. They built narratives in their heads like blueprints for your supposed failure, confident that they could predict your next move. And every time they did, they were proven wrong. They expected mistakes. They expected shortcuts. They expected moments where you would falter, crumble, or reveal that all the hype was nothing but smoke. They were waiting for evidence that you were ordinary, flawed, or easy to dismiss. But the reality kept defying their assumptions. Every prediction they made, every scenario they outlined in their minds, collapsed in the face of your consistency and clarity. Their inside information, which they trusted more than their own judgment, became a series of embarrassing errors. The more they tried to piece together your life, the more they realized they were looking at it upside down. Every story they told themselves about you, every expectation of weakness or misstep, turned into proof of your capability and resilience. Their confidence in being in the know backfired. What they thought would expose you ended up showcasing your intelligence, discipline, and foresight. It wasn't about luck. It wasn't about timing. It wasn't even about intention. It was about you living authentically while they kept using assumptions as their guide. And assumptions are fragile. They break the moment reality doesn't bend to them. At some point, their reliance on inside information became almost comical. They were convinced they had all the answers, yet every prediction failed. Every assumption crumbled. Every scenario they relied on to discredit you ended up proving your strength, stability, and vision. In the end, the very thing they trusted to control the narrative turned into their undoing. Their information wasn't insight. It was a reflection of their own misjudgment, their own biases, and their inability to see what was right in front of them. You weren't just ahead. You were untouchable because the map they followed led only to your success. Number 9. Their calmness destroyed their narrative. One of the most frustrating things for critics, doubters, and insecure people is watching someone remain completely unshaken while their assumptions fall apart. They want drama. They want chaos. They want proof that you are human in the way that makes them feel superior. They expect anger, panic, overreaction, or any hint of vulnerability they can exploit. Instead, you moved through everything with calmness and clarity, and that alone destroyed the story they were trying to write about you. They built narratives expecting to catch you reacting. Every whisper, every criticism, every attempt to provoke a response was a test they believed you would fail. And every single time, nothing came. Your poise didn't just deflect their attacks, it invalidated them. Your calmness was evidence that the drama they counted on to justify their disbelief or mockery didn't exist. It made their entire strategy look foolish because they had planned for chaos that never appeared. People underestimate the power of quiet control. Loudness gets attention, but composure earns authority. While they were screaming at the world about what you were supposedly doing wrong or failing at, you were simply handling life, handling business, and handling yourself in a way that didn't need explanation. That lack of reaction forced them to confront the truth. The narrative they believed in only existed in their own minds. It's even more frustrating for them, because calmness cannot be faked over the long term. They can't manufacture it. They can't post it online. They can't force it to impress observers. It's lived, it's real, and it's impossible for them to argue against without looking desperate or petty. The more they tried to spin your behavior into weakness, the more obvious it became that their interpretation was nothing but projection. By staying composed, you didn't just survive their attempts to define you. You exposed their assumptions, their impatience, and their need for spectacle. Calmness became your tool, your shield, and your silent weapon. And nothing frustrates those trying to control the narrative more than realizing the person they wanted to break never had any intention of playing their game. Number 10. The same authorities they quoted now quote you. There's a striking kind of irony in watching the very voices someone relied on to validate their doubts turn around and validate you instead. The people they trusted most, mentors, experts, respected leaders, or anyone with perceived credibility, were once their pillars of certainty. Those were the authorities they used to justify skepticism, criticism, or outright dismissal of your abilities. "They're not that skilled," they'd say, quoting someone they trusted. "It's not worth following," they'd insist, leaning on another respected voice. Their opinions felt airtight because they were supported by sources they considered untouchable. And then everything flipped. The same authorities they leaned on, the same voices that once minimized you, began to acknowledge your work, quote your insights, and highlight your achievements. Suddenly, the narrative they depended on to feel smart and justified collapsed. The proof was no longer in your words or actions alone. It was in the endorsements of the people they had believed would never side with you. And that hit harder than any argument could. It's not just validation, it's social evidence. When the very people they considered ultimate arbiters of credibility start pointing to you as the example, the tables turn completely. Their assumptions, opinions, and attempts to belittle you lose all authority because the authorities themselves have shifted. And unlike arguments or debates, this kind of endorsement can't be dismissed without looking foolish. The silent effect on your critics is devastating. They are forced to confront that what they built in their minds, their doubts, their judgments, their superiority, was based on an illusion of authority. And that illusion crumbles the moment the authorities themselves start siding with you. In essence, you didn't need to chase validation. You didn't need to convince anyone. You simply operated at a level where credibility was undeniable, where the voices people once used against you became witnesses to your reality. That alone rewrites the story, leaving your critics exposed, humbled, and painfully aware that the framework they trusted to judge you had already shifted in your favor. Number 11. You became proof that their limits were self-imposed. The hardest truth for people to face is that most of their boundaries exist only in their minds. They create rules about what they can and cannot do, convince themselves they're limited by circumstances, and measure success by the achievements of others instead of their own potential. They assume that anyone who rises faster or higher than them must have some unfair advantage or hidden shortcut. And then you come along, quietly proving that their limits are imaginary and the discomfort is immediate and intense. Every time you succeed, every time you grow, every time you handle challenges they thought would break you, you expose the reality they don't want to see. They weren't held back by talent, opportunity, or luck. They were held back by hesitation, doubt, and the stories they told themselves about what's possible. Your progress isn't just a personal victory, it's a mirror reflecting their fear and inaction. And that reflection is humiliating because it's undeniable. What makes this even more piercing is that you didn't have to prove anything to them. You weren't trying to show them how wrong they were. You were simply living your life, making decisions, and moving forward consistently. Meanwhile, they watched, realizing that everything they claimed as obstacles, every excuse they clung to, was a choice they made themselves. Your life became the evidence that their fear, insecurity, and self-imposed boundaries were the only things standing in their way. The frustration they feel isn't about you. It's about confronting the truth they've avoided for years. Growth, success, and achievement are not determined by external limits. They're determined by decisions, discipline, and clarity of purpose. And you demonstrated all three while they were busy doubting, calculating, and criticizing. By simply existing at a level that defied their expectations, you shattered the framework they built for themselves. You didn't need to fight them, prove anything, or compete. You became a living contradiction to every excuse they had ever relied on. That truth is not just humbling. It's unbearable for anyone unwilling to face their own self-imposed boundaries. Number 12. You didn't win loudly. You won inevitably. There's a difference between someone who celebrates every small victory and someone whose progress is so steady, so unstoppable, that it becomes inevitable. You didn't need to shout, post, or perform to prove your worth. You weren't interested in approval or applause. You just moved forward day after day, step after step, building momentum that no one could disrupt. And that's what makes it so frustrating for those who doubted you. They wanted drama, spectacle, or a fight. What they got instead was a reality that could not be argued with. Your wins weren't flashy because they didn't need to be. They were deliberate, consistent, and cumulative. Every decision, every action, every choice added weight to the outcome, and over time, it became undeniable. While critics were busy waiting for a collapse, you quietly built an unshakable foundation. By the time anyone realized the scale of your progress, it wasn't a matter of luck or chance. It was the result of long-term persistence. You didn't win because you proved them wrong in a single moment. You won because it was impossible not to win over time. And that inevitability is almost cruel in its simplicity. They watched, hoping for failure, calculating ways to slow you down, and yet nothing could alter the trajectory you were on. The harder they tried to predict or challenge you, the more the outcome confirmed itself. Every failed attempt to catch you off guard only emphasized that your progress was steady, measured, and unstoppable. The beauty of this kind of victory is that it doesn't need validation. It doesn't need noise. It doesn't need anyone's permission. You didn't have to explain or justify your actions. The results appeared naturally, like a law of physics no one could bend. And that's what makes it so infuriating for them. By the time they realized you were ahead, it was too late. They weren't watching a win. They were witnessing inevitability. Your success wasn't loud, dramatic, or flashy. It was unstoppable, undeniable, and far beyond anyone's ability to interrupt or debate. Number 13. They laughed at you early so they wouldn't cry later. Early on, people dismissed you. They joked. They mocked. They minimized your achievements and your potential. That laughter wasn't harmless. It was defense. They needed to convince themselves that you weren't serious, that you weren't a threat, that your success didn't matter. It was easier to make you a joke than to face the possibility that you could surpass them. Every smirk, every sarcastic comment, every whispered insult was a shield for their ego, protecting them from the uncomfortable truth that you were capable of more than they allowed themselves to believe. The irony is brutal. That very laughter was a sign of fear disguised as humor. They thought they were clever, predicting failure and exposing weakness. But what they didn't realize is that mocking someone before they even had a chance to rise only postpones the inevitable. You didn't just survive their jokes, you thrived, quietly building skills, reputation, and results while they clung to the illusion that your potential was imaginary. Over time, that laughter lost its edge. It started sounding nervous, forced, even hollow. What was once dismissive now revealed insecurity. They couldn't laugh confidently because the reality you were creating contradicted every joke they made. The stories they told themselves to feel superior no longer matched what was happening in front of them. Every day that you kept moving forward, every accomplishment stacked on top of the last, made the early ridicule look absurd. The cruel twist is that the people who laughed first often end up witnessing your success without understanding how it happened. Their jokes were their own undoing. They tried to shrink you with humor, but instead they gave you a contrast that highlighted your rise. The louder they laughed at first, the quieter they became as reality caught up. By the time they understood what was happening, it was too late. That laughter wasn't proof they were right. It was proof they were afraid. And fear, no matter how cleverly disguised, can't stop someone who refuses to play by their expectations. You moved forward while they were still trying to protect their pride, and now their forced smiles are a reminder that they misjudged you from the start. Number 14. The ultimate humiliation. You never tried to prove them wrong. The most devastating truth for anyone who doubted you is that you never wasted energy on them. You didn't argue, you didn't justify yourself, you didn't post explanations or chase approval. You simply lived your life, focused on your growth, your goals, and your path, while they busied themselves trying to control the narrative. That alone is the kind of humiliation that leaves people unsettled because they expected a fight and instead got indifference. And indifference is far more revealing than any argument. They assumed they were in control of your story, thinking that their words, opinions, and gossip could shape reality. They believed that if they ridiculed you, questioned you, or minimized you enough, they could limit your impact. But while they were strategizing, predicting, and waiting for you to falter, you quietly kept building. Every success, every moment of clarity, every demonstration of skill and integrity happened without fanfare. It didn't exist to prove a point. It existed because it was simply who you were. The brilliance of this is that it removes their leverage completely. They can't argue with facts when you aren't focused on defending yourself. They can't twist your reactions because there are none to exploit. Their assumptions crumble quietly and painfully as they watch your life advance without confrontation, without spectacle, without drama. You became untouchable not by fighting, but by refusing to engage in the battles they imagined existed. And that is why it stings so deeply. People who expect resistance, revenge, or validation from you find none. The absence of reaction is a mirror reflecting not your weakness, but their misjudgment. You never set out to teach them a lesson, but in living authentically and staying committed to your path, you've already done so in the most undeniable way. The ultimate humiliation is not in proving yourself. It is in showing, through action and calm consistency, that their opinion, their judgment, and their attempts to define you are irrelevant. You moved forward while they remained trapped in their own disbelief, leaving them exposed, embarrassed, and powerless, and you never had to lift a finger to make it happen. Everything we've explored today points to a single, undeniable truth. Your rise isn't about proving anyone wrong, earning approval, or playing by their rules. It's about living with integrity, consistency, and purpose, so undeniable that the very people who doubted you become witnesses to your reality. Every critic, every skeptic, every trusted source they leaned on, all of them inadvertently built the evidence of your greatness. They laughed at you, they investigated you, they tried to discredit you, and yet each of their moves only amplified your credibility. Every assumption they made, every attempt to predict your limits, every narrative they spun to make you look small, it collapsed quietly under the weight of your persistence, your calm, and your clarity. You didn't need drama. You didn't need confrontation. You didn't even need recognition. Your life became a statement in itself, an undeniable proof that authenticity, focus, and steady progress are far more powerful than noise, gossip, or skepticism. By simply moving forward, you forced everyone to recalibrate their perception of you. You forced them to see that the limits they imagined were never real, that the authority they trusted could be challenged without fighting, and that true influence and legacy don't come from winning arguments, but from living a life others can't deny. This is the ultimate lesson. Those who doubted you, mocked you, or questioned you are now facing a reality they can't control. The same authorities they quoted now quote you. The gossip they spread became your platform. The laughter they threw at you has turned hollow, exposing their fear, insecurity, and misjudgment. And through it all, you stayed unshaken, untouchable, and inevitable, proving that true power lies not in proving yourself to others, but in simply becoming the person they never saw coming. If this resonated with you, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss the kind of insights that challenge the narrative and uncover the truth. Like this video if it opened your eyes, comment below with your thoughts, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Your growth and awareness start here, and together we're rewriting the story they thought they could control. Stay awakened,